So we are... Oh my God. Okay.
You put your hands on my waist, kiss my face. You really know how to make my heart race. Take a taste of my lips, feel this bliss. You got me hypnotized.
We have run into technical issues again for the third episode in a row.
We can do this all day and all night. Take a first class flight. Bitches know we flying high.
But we are making progress. Here we are, the third episode. We had some pretty good feedback for the first two episodes. A lot of people, we didn't expect that people would want to volunteer to be on the podcast, so that's nice.
We had
That's
a few
flattering.
actually that have wanted to, said they want to come on, be
That's
guests, pretty good support.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to use my cheesy joke that I used before that didn't make the original third episode. That was, people are saying we look like Justin Timberlake and The Rock, just smarter. Justin Timberlake.
I thought it was the other way around. But okay, that's fine.
No, actually, it's been good. The first few episodes have been good. The flow seems to be good. People are saying some decent things, and
well,
thanks.
after your really good joke there, I hope this records and we can actually produce this one. This was nice. It's nice. So let's get right into it. 41% of all businesses operating in Canada right now will go for sale. They will be available. Because
and that's actually 5 minutes ago that was the first time I heard that spec, and you said that was from who?
BDC. So that's pretty much the Entrepreneurial Bank of Canada, right? So that's not the actual FITS, the acronym, but they're there to support entrepreneurs. That's the main goal of the bank. And so they're great for occupying, purchasing, and financing for other businesses. So BDC releases this report. What are you smiling about?
No.
Did I say something all fucky or what? Okay. So BDC releases this report, 41%. And the main reason why that's so big, and just to put that into context actually, first, that means of every second plumbing company will be for sale over the course of the next 5 years. Every second HVAC company, right, will be for sale over the next 5 years. Every second anything, you name it, will be available and for sale. Where are the buyers going to come from, right? So I'm very intrigued. Like, one of our guests should be a business broker and just kind of what he sees in the market, right? So, it's an interesting perspective because the reason why it's 41%, the reason why it's almost half, is because the largest demographic of entrepreneurs is baby boomers, right? So they're looking to retire, and their sons and daughters don't want to take over the business. Maybe they have a nice job. Maybe this just doesn't interest them. But regardless, we have this opportunity now where if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to own your own business, now, over the course of the next 5 years, is a huge opportunity.
I'd say, easier than ever. But you got to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And that's what we were talking about before was, how the business landscape's going to look moving forward, in 5 years, 10 years, 20, 30 years, and how much it's changed in the last same amount of time. Like, business has gone down. The number of small businesses have gone down quite a bit. I mean, there's no real mom and pop businesses on main streets anymore. The staples of communities, especially small communities like where I'm from, I mean, those aren't around anymore for a number of reasons. Like, people retire. The kids don't want to take over the business. Big box stores have come into some of these areas and, help them close the doors a little sooner than they'd like to see, whatever the case may be. And how's that going to look moving forward when, like you said, 41% of the businesses are going to either sell, or I would say even a lot of them will close down as well, right?
Yeah, because the other statistic is I don't know the exact percentage. We'd have to Google it, but the vast majority of all businesses today, and this is before the selling spree over the next 5 years, the vast majority of businesses don't sell. So, it's only the cream of the crop here over the next 5 years will actually get a sales price and actually close. But to me, I'm super interested in what does that mean? Because if you look at a business, let's just in its most simplest manner, right? When you look at company X, let's say company X makes $100,000. Now, let's just call it net dollars. You can put EBITDA aside from it and complicate it, and we can make it as complicated as possible. But let's just put a multiple on it, 3-time multiple. Okay, 300,000. Great. Now you add assets onto that, right? Let's just say it has $100,000 worth of assets, right? So let's back up. Let's just say company X makes $100,000 a year, has for the last 7 years. You tack on a 3-time multiple plus assets. That's 400,000. Does that make sense? That's pretty simple, right?
Yeah, that's very simple.
So what does that happen now, 3 years from now, when there's 10 companies just like that in the same marketplace trying to sell?
Mm-hmm.
Is it still going to get the 3-time multiple? Maybe it's 1.5 now. Maybe it's just 1.
Yeah,
right?
It's going to change quite a bit, on the next, apparently, 5-10 years. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest play or train of thought too, is where do our company evaluations go, right? So it's interesting because right now you're already battling for a higher multiple. 5-7 is very rare.
To be honest, though, I don't plan on selling our companies anytime soon. So to me, that doesn't really matter as long as they're making some money and cash flow. I think it's, like you said, an opportunity to buy. But this is kind of where we've been heading for a number of years. We've kind of had an idea like this for, the We Buy Businesses idea for a number of years.
Yeah.
And like you were saying before, we've kind of solidified it and came up with more of a business model and a plan and everything like that about a year ago.
Before, when we had technical difficulties,
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, we're a mom and pop podcast operation. We're gonna have technical difficulties.
I'm the pop. You're the mom.
No. Anyway. So I kind of feel like we're ahead of the curve on this one that we've seen coming a number of years back. Whereas we want to grow our portfolios. The popular thing a couple years ago, 10 years ago, was real estate. Everybody wanted to grow their real estate portfolios, and what we wanted to do is make a shift towards having a portfolio of businesses. So, we've kind of started working towards that the last number of years, and, we're getting better and better at, not only evaluating companies, but, evaluating them quickly, deciding whether they're worth, more of our time to delve into and check the numbers and that kind of stuff. But I do think that us together as a team will have, a portfolio of business that's substantial, in the next 5-10 years. And it excites me actually to hear that, all these businesses will be selling in the last, however many years that's going to be, 41% in how many years? 5 years, did you say?
Over the course of the 5-year time
5 years. So more opportunities for guys like us who, know what they're looking for, know the criteria of the businesses they're looking for, and then know how to evaluate them and evaluate them quickly to jump on opportunities, right? So that's kind of our plan moving forward.
Oh, and actually, now that I think about it, I believe, I actually can pull up a chart that says what's the percentage of people that actually are looking to buy additional businesses, just like our business model. And that percentage, I would assume, has vastly increased. So 8%. So 41% over the next 5 years are looking to sell. 8%, that's quite large, are looking to buy additional businesses, right? So it's not like we're doing something that's super, super rare. I think that you look at Berkshire Hathaway. Think about this, Berkshire Hathaway, right? What did it start out as? It was like
a textiles company.
Yeah, right? And then it turned into this massive behemoth of kind of like an investment firm. Right, where it's buying and selling public securities, but most of its holdings are privately held companies. And so you look at that started when there was no Indiegogo, there was no Kickstarter, there was no internet, right? I mean, they probably had like the little spin dial phones. You remember that?
I don't even know if they had those.
No, that was probably a pretty rare thing.
Yeah, it was like in the 50s I think Warren Buffett bought that company in the 50s.
The late 50s. And
I think it had started, in the 1800s or something.
That company was already very old. And so I think he flexed his muscle a little bit in the early 60s and then took majority ownership of that
Something
company.
Like that.
Something like that. I can't remember exactly. But my point is this, Berkshire Hathaway grew to a multi-billion dollar evaluation during times where they didn't even have a rotary freaking phone. Now you have all this technology and all these ways to look at companies, and even the education that's available wasn't available back then. So if you wanted to be like a mini Berkshire, right? I mean, how much more writing on the wall do you need?
It's prime opportunity, but I want to back up a bit for something
yeah.
you said when you said about 8% of the
8%.
people will be looking to increase business. Think about that for a second. So my opinion on that too, 8% might be looking to buy business, but how many of those businesses will, number one, be bought and then possibly fold, or be bought and then possibly have both businesses fold because people don't have the right team in place or whatever, and that happens all the time.
Premature growth.
That's right. People aren't ready for it, or somebody's doing really well at one company, figure they can take on the world, and then adding that second one, and both companies go for shit.
Yeah,
like that happens, right? And if I was by myself, I don't think I would even dream of taking on more than one business. It's too much. It's so much work even having one business, but having the good team that we do, I feel like we can grow exponentially and to scale.
Yeah, and I would, to also back up too, I don't think that 8% are people in our exact situation. I think that 8% is largely people that are looking to expand their current business. Like maybe their competitor down the street is in the same industry as them, and if they buy them out because they're looking to sell in the first place, right?
That's a good point. Yeah.
That's probably the vast majority of that 8%. And I would assume people that are in our shoes, 1, maybe 2%, right? So 8% just, to me, sounded quite alarming. These are people that are looking to make a very aggressive play within their business. But is it enough to make up that market? Like when you have that much, think about it. Let's view it in the context of a public security. Walmart. People just start selling Walmart stock like crazy. Well, if there's not an appropriate amount of buyers, Walmart's evaluation will go down, right? And it doesn't matter how good their cash flow was at that point. It's kind of
it's got to get low enough so it's attractive for somebody to buy it, and that's going to be the same thing with small business, right?
Yeah. So, I'm still trying to wrap my head around that 41%.
It's crazy.
It sounds like, to me, I try and like walk into that scenario. Like half of every business, or all businesses operating in your marketplace, like in your city, will be available for purchase. That's boggling my brain.
Yeah.
It sounds too much, but BDC is legitimate. Like I would assume that's a legitimate statistic, right?
I would hope so, yeah.
So they probably spent some money to figure that out. I'm still fascinated by that. Yeah. So moving on, if you are looking for opportunities, and there is a lot out there, right? I would assume that you guys might have gravitated to us maybe for the name We Buy Businesses, or you've heard about us, or Sheldon, or myself. So a little bit about us. I've known Sheldon for 10, 11 years, something like that.
Yeah, around there.
So, and we actually got to know each other at a dealership, a Chevy dealership. So what had happened was, just a little bit about us. I was trying to be a mechanic. Sheldon was already a mechanic. And eventually I worked my way up to getting my own bay, where I would work on vehicles. And my bay was right next to Sheldon's. And there was one day, I was listening in on Sheldon, I was eavesdropping on his phone call, and he was talking, he was working on a rear diff, taking it apart, and he was talking about buying an investment condo, right? And you probably remember this, right?
I was zero money down. I still have that condo, zero money down. Yeah, I've had it for years.
Nice. So I was eavesdropping, and I was like, real estate investment condo, what the hell? And I was already fairly motivated. Like I had an RSP plan, I was saving money, I was buying public securities. I had saved quite a bit. At 18, I saved close to $17,000, right? So I was very motivated at that young of an age, but I was fascinated because I didn't even know that was possible. So I walked over to Sheldon and I was like, man, you can invest in real estate? Like, where did you find out about this stuff? And you actually told me to just go read Rich Dad Poor Dad. He didn't even really explain anything to me. He said, just like, read this book, then come talk to me, right? And that actually probably made more impact than if you did some like, oh man, because everybody does this. You've got to invest in this. You got to control your money and get into stock options, or you got to control.
Oh,
your
yeah,
money,
everybody's a professional at what they're investing in.
Yeah, and they instantly know what you're good at and the context around your life and all that's madness. But I liked how you approached it because you were like, hey, just read this book and we'll talk later. And I ended up reading Rich Dad Poor Dad and then reading every single Robert Kiyosaki book within 3-4 weeks, and then I quit my job.
Yeah, you went right off the chart for extreme there, but yeah, that was cool.
So, and that was 11 years ago, right?
Ish,
and yeah. So, and then you ended up getting into rent to owns, and then I ended up getting into.
Well, I started out doing buy and hold properties.
Yeah.
Right, and building a portfolio there. Did rent to own properties for people for a few years, while you were doing flip properties. And then we joined up. We did a couple flip properties together as well.
Yeah.
Just kind of not run the gamut in real estate, but I mean, between the two of us, I mean, we did a lot of different real estate deals. And then, we attend a lot of business conferences, obviously, and have for years. Well, and Chris was in the seminar industry with, well-known guy in Canada for a number of years. So, I mean, you've attended 10 times more of the business conferences
still though,
I do.
Right?
Yeah,
we really invested
go.
in ourselves, right? Like that was probably at least for me, that was my largest expense.
Yeah.
Like once I quit my job, like I was like, man, like I spent $30,000 on courses. So I think this is getting a little obsessive.
Yeah. But, what I noticed at those business courses was, everybody was gravitating towards real estate. Like I said earlier, it was really popular for a long time. Everybody's got to go get, real estate. And, and that's what I was doing too. And it was a great place to start. But I just noticed, here, all of a sudden I'm 5 years in, I'm 10 years into my real estate, and, and I mean, it's doing okay.
Yeah.
But, not fantastic. I can't retire off it. So I just started thinking, in between about probably, after year 5 and you realize where you're at, it's like, well, this is great. And real estate is a good long-term investment. Absolutely. I'm never going to change my mind on that. However, it's not happening fast enough for me. So, at these, business conferences, which were essentially real estate conferences, because everybody there is trying to buy real estate, and there's very few business people there, but the ones that were there were the ones that had, I'd say, most of the money. Instead of having, one investment property or 2 or 10 or 20, the guys that had actual businesses there were the guys that also had big real estate portfolios. So I kind of had to back up and think, well, how do I get into business? So I started reading more about business, and wanting to go that avenue, and read about business for a while before I ever got into it, and then, ended up getting a property management company here in Grand Prairie with a business partner of mine, coming up on 3 years ago, and then got into Blastaway with Colby and Chris about 2.5 years ago. So,
yeah, very close to 3 years now. Very close.
Yeah, well, it took us, even to get Blastaway, I mean, it took us almost a year, I'd say. We met like every week.
Yeah.
There was a group of us that met every week specifically to evaluate businesses together to buy. And, when you're kind of cutting your teeth and getting your chops evaluating business, I mean, it takes a long time because, I mean, you can evaluate all the numbers in the world, but if you don't know what they mean, you don't have shit. And that's kind of what I think a lot of that was in the beginning, was just kind of learning how the numbers work together, learning what to look for when evaluating a business, that kind of stuff. And then, we came upon Blastaway, and that took, months to close, probably 6 months at least.
Yeah, a little bit longer, but just to backtrack what you said there, because you said a lot just there. I think, so the first thing with real estate, I agree with you. For most of the seminars that I've been to, there was a huge focus on real estate, and not to take away from that asset class. It's very important. It's a very solid asset class to get into.
Oh, yeah.
If you enjoy real estate, bonus, right? We know a lot of guys that have built businesses around real estate, and they're extraordinarily successful. And so you can still build a business with real estate. So you're kind of converging the two asset classes together, business, the asset class of business, asset class of real estate, and then you converge the two. But let's say if you just had money and you were just on your own trying to invest in real estate, I mean, unless you got a couple mil there, I think you can do something. But otherwise,
even if you did, you're still going to run out of money.
That's exactly it, right? So it's a long-term game, and you have to be extraordinarily patient with real estate, even if you do have a couple mil, right? So I think for me, so I was heavy in flipping, and I did that for 3-4 years. In fact, I did a deal this year. So eventually it got to the point where I became a construction company because I was flipping so much, because I had so much material expense and labor expense associated.
Well, I think at one point we had, 5 flips on the go at one time? Was it 4 or 5?
Yeah, 4 or 5 at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. For me, that was a pretty big deal. I know there's some big players out there, but in 1 year, my best year was $7 million in real estate, and so you have literally $500,000-$600,000 in just materials. Right. That doesn't even cover your contractors. That's just materials. So you become a construction company at that point. So I became a construction company / I do real estate too. Right. So that's kind of what happened for me. And look, it's not a bad place to be. I think real estate's a great place to be. And if you build a successful business around it, great. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but it's all about deal flow. Mm-hmm. If you don't have deal flow, you have no business. You will not get anywhere. And for me, I looked at, okay, where can you build a business that can operate without you, right? You still need to provide leadership. You still need to provide vision, right? There's still things that will always attach you to that business. But with real estate, it's 10 times harder because of that hidden factor of deal flow. You can still get away around that for sure, but it's just that little extra factor versus some of the other businesses I've looked at. And I went, you know what?
And with flipping too, it's all market dependent. I mean, we were flipping, 3 years ago, 3 and a bit years ago, and we ended up getting stuck with one one flip property. So we were kind of almost stuck with a couple of them as we were flipping, and that's the problem with flipping. And I was actually opposed to it for quite a number of years. But
then I convinced you.
Just for that reason, Chris convinced me. Market went to shit. I'm not saying it's his fault. But it's his fault.
And look,
that's the game you play.
That's the thing, right? We still had a good success rate overall.
Oh yeah.
But then it's just horrible timing because you got in on like that last several months, 8 months, or was it the last year?
I'd say the last year, and the market
like
just
the first 4 or 5 deals were great, and then the next, oh my god,
so much.
Yeah.
But, I was willing to play that game, because, I had a little bit of money to spend on that kind of stuff. And if they went sideways, I knew that could happen, and it did.
Yeah.
And it's not sideways. I mean, we've had that property for a few years and, got tenants in it and stuff. And we'll just take longer to get our money back out of it. But, that's fine. It's all part of the experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so that's a big thing for me. I think, again, just to take a step back, we're looking to obviously purchase businesses. There's nothing wrong with a real estate business.
Nothing at all. And like I said, for me, I'm super glad I started there because it is a little bit of a slower pace and you can kind of get your feet wet as you feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. I know even for me looking back on it, I got to 7 properties and I thought it was just too much. Like I got from 0 to 7, I think within the matter of a year and a half or so. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my God, I can't handle this. This is too much work. I took almost a year off from buying places and I couldn't even get my thoughts together. So, you look back on it now, it's like, oh, only 7, I would have nothing to do if I had 7 properties now. So your mind and your mindset, your context, everything has to grow slowly when you're starting from the start.
Mm-hmm. And I think real estate's a great place to start off at.
That's what I mean. And
you get 1 or 2 properties, you learn how to evaluate them, how to
talk with people, talk with contractors,
how to
do business deals, how to purchase them.
That's a big one.
It was a great place to start, but once I got extremely comfortable with it, it wasn't anywhere near good enough exciting enough or fast enough for me anymore.
Yeah.
And that's why we got into business. And, you know, business is definitely, you know, exciting, sometimes good, sometimes
roller coaster.
sometimes not so good.
Roller coaster.
Very much a roller coaster. You know, this last week and a bit for us has been very challenging in business and very, I don't know, stressful, but, you know, we're getting through it. And, you know, I think, and that's where, you know, real estate is a great place to start, because had I started off in business, I probably would have been a statistic where it's, you know, was it 80%? I can't remember.
No,
the
it's
number.
90%. Different. There's always different.
90% of businesses fail in the first 5 years.
5 years,
Guarantee
yeah.
fucking
9
to
out of
you,
10.
I would have been one of those had I not had that real estate experience. But, you know, now we're getting our teeth cut on business. I think we got a pretty good handle of it. Mm-hmm. I don't see us folding in the next 2 years.
Hey, so it's always a probability.
It is.
And that's a
Anything
conversation.
Can happen.
By the way, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a conversation we always have. It's like, hey, and even when I got Colby involved in the deal too, I was like, Colby, so here's 3 things. 1, we buy the company, we're successful. 2, we buy the company. Nothing really changes, and that stays the same. And then there's 3, we just go bankrupt. So if he's okay with all 3, come on in, and he was cool with that.
But that's, you know, what I think
the
is
full transparency of the situation.
But that's what I think is great about us too, is that we actually sit and have these conversations. Like, hey, if things go sideways tomorrow, you know, what can we do? What does that look like? What can we do? And how do we prevent that from going sideways on us tomorrow? So we actually do try and give ourselves reality checks and not get jaded to the fact that we can still end up a statistic, but I think we can change and adapt, and that's the whole key of not ending up one, I think, is being able to change, being able to adapt, and being able to control your environment around you. And, you know, I think we're getting good at that, but, you know, it's also a challenge as well.
Yeah, so on that note, I guess we can call this number 3. Sure. Put that in the books. So again, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Justin Timberlake. It's a great 3rd episode. Let's end on that note. And on the 4th one, I don't know, we'll keep the ball rolling. You got time? I got time. Okay, cool. So hopefully this was entertaining and of value to you. That's all our goal really is with these podcasts. And we'll launch the 4th one this week, and then the 4th one in a couple of days. So take care, guys. See ya.